Jan Yost, Ray Mariano with us here on the Hank Stolz Experience. We're so glad you could both come this evening, and we appreciate it. We're going to talk a little bit about housing. And Ray, if we could please set up for us Worcester Housing Authority. What is the mission of the WHA?
Well, the Housing Authority began in 1949 with the construction of veteran apartments at Lakeside, which is, and it's a 202 unit development over in Webster Square. And then Great Brook Valley and Curtis Apartments came thereafter. Initially it was set up for veterans, returning veterans, and families. And then it became single individuals and more elderly. Today we have 3,000 apartments that we own, another 2,500 that we lease in 24 developments scattered all across the city. Many of the developments that we own and manage, people don't know are Housing Authority properties. As a matter of fact, in a number of instances, I had them take down the WHA signs because the development looks so nice. We've done such a great job putting it together. We didn't want people to know it was public housing. We just wanted to think it's a part of the community.
Certain stigma attached to public housing?
There's a little doubt that that's true, particularly family housing. There's a stigma that's attached to it. And I can say that because I spent 20 years of my life growing up in public housing. Public housing has changed dramatically, though, from the 1949, 50, 51 era to today. It is significantly different. It began as a place, as I said, for returning veterans and families, people who needed a stop along the way. The Mariano family stopped. We stopped for 20 years, but when we left, we never came back. 9 children, all moved out, got their own houses, started their own businesses, all very successful, and now we pay taxes for other people to move into public housing. And that's how it's supposed to be. Unfortunately, along the way, over the last several decades, things have changed, and they changed gradually. Today, instead of a stop along the way, it's become the way. Public housing has become the housing of choice, if you will, for some families who stay 3, 4, 5 generations. So you'll have a young mother with a child in public housing, and her mother and other children in public housing, and her grandmother. And prior to that, there were other generations of the same family in public housing. That's not what it was designed for, right, but that's what it's become.
Jan, how then, and we looked in at Ray as an example of this, you know, family used it for what it was. It was a hand up, not a handout, stepping stone. How then do we start to break this cycle that has gotten to be now?
Well, fortunately, Ray wants to do something about it and approach the Health Foundation for support to look around the country at what other communities have done to break this cycle. And the Health Foundation has provided a planning grant to help the Housing Authority do that. Out of the planning grant should come a pilot grant that would begin in 2012, trying on a small scale a different way of doing this, that hopefully will become effective and we'll be able to broaden it in subsequent years.
Some tough love needed?
Well, a change. Tough love maybe, but a change, for an opportunity for people. And by the way, let me just say, without the Health Foundation, none of this is possible for us. Jan's agency has done more to help people and to help housing advocates in Worcester than any other agency I've seen in my 30 years in the public business. They've done a magnificent job, and they've given us an opportunity. When I became executive director, we said, look, there are a number of things to do. We reduced overall crime by 60%, vice crime by 80%. We cleaned it up, we made it livable. We have a program that we call Neighborhood Best, and some of our properties are literally the best property in the neighborhood. And we have great little stories to tell about how people have gone and said, I want to move there. And when we told them it was public housing, they said, no, I don't live in public housing. I want to live there. But we've made it look nice. People don't realize that it's in fact public housing in Tatnick Square, on Grafton Hill, in Quincy Village.
But and is that a way to break the cycle?
Well, no.
Just through
that's a way to better manage public housing. But what we want to do is we want to look at the people who are there and say, you know what? A lot of those folks don't have what you and I and what Jan had in their life. They don't have direction. They don't have guidance. And the biggest thing they don't have is hope. I'm the father of 3 children. I talk about my children all the time. And when my children, who are now grown, they're in law school and graduate school and doing great for themselves, when they have a problem, even now, they call their father, 5 in the morning, 6 in the morning, 10 at night, 11 at night, Dad, what do I do? How do I handle this? And I give them whatever guidance I can, or they call their mother. If they really want advice, they call their mother. But there's someone there to say, turn to the left, turn to the right, okay, now keep going forward, keep going forward. For our residents, most of them, many of them, do not have the guidance that they need. So they don't know when to turn to the left. They don't know when to turn to the right. And consequently, they expect to fail. With this planning grant, what we're trying to do is reach those people who say, I want a better life. In fact, that's the name of the program, A Better Life. We're not going to touch anyone or talk to anyone at this point. We hope to down the road. At this point, we're only going to reach out to those people who say, could you give me that opportunity? I'd like to get the heck out of here. I'd like to do something different with my life, something better with my life. And we're going to learn from this experience, work with them, get them to move out and on and up. And as we do that, we're going to look at some things, which I think, and I told Jan the other day, even though it's not part of the pilot grant, ultimately the Health Foundation will be responsible for working with us to get us to change the way we provide public housing in Worcester. It no longer will be the same thing for 3, 4, 5 generations.
And this could go on to be a national model. And I want to ask you about this A Better Life, because there's many out there who have decided that many who live in public housing don't want a better life. And maybe we can smash some of those stereotypes coming up in just a moment, right here on the Hank Stolz Experience. A better life, and how can you break this cycle in public housing of multi-generational, of it just this continuing cycle that's going on? Jan, when it comes to a better life, and as I referenced a moment ago, it does seem that a lot of us on the outside, you know, you're looking at public housing, you go, oh, people are where they want to be, even if they were offered a way out, perhaps they wouldn't take it. I mean, a stereotype, or do you think there's some truth to that?
Oh, probably a little bit of both. I think that over time, a system that we created in this country that we thought was a humane and wonderful approach has no longer ended up to be that. Now it has become the aspiration of those that have lived there, as Ray was saying, for generations. This is what they see, and then this is what they aspire to for themselves, to live among their family and have the same life.
Is part of it fear? I mean, because now it has become institutionalized?
You know, I don't know that it'd be fear. It's what they know.
Right.
All of us like what we know.
Sure.
We're familiar with it. We're comfortable with it, and it becomes then our way of life.
It's a lack of hope. Yeah. People don't have, it's not fear, Jan's right, it's a lack of hope. They don't have confidence. They expect, our folks expect to fail. And so why try? If you ask one of my kids when they were growing up, oh, I can do this, even when they couldn't. I can do this, I can do this, I can do this. And of course, because you think you can do all of these wonderful things,
right,
you get to do more. Our folks expect to fail. They don't have any role models of people who have passed, or very few. I was at a meeting the other day, as a matter of fact, Jan was at it not long ago, and I talked about role models, and someone at the meeting took exception for a good reason, and said, there are plenty of role models. I said, well, there are role models, but there aren't plenty. There are very, very few, in fact. And so when you look to the left and look to the right, you see other people who are just like you, and you say, well, I guess that's where I belong. And what we're asking folks to do, we've just started, we've asked people to raise their hand. Mm-hmm. And we had people run to the meeting. We actually had some woman who was 70-something years old who said, can I be a part of this? I'd like to get the heck out of here. And we said, well, geez, you're a little bit old for the program. But the point is that there are some. And once a few succeed, once they say, okay, there's Hank and Jan and Ray, and look what they're doing. I want a piece of that. Give me some of that. And we're learning as we're studying this. I must tell you, I feel like I'm back in school in some respects. And Jan makes me go back to class all the time. She's giving me stuff to read, and she's challenging us, and she's doing a wonderful job with that. But you see, now we recognize, for example, one of the biggest problems is, and it makes sense, they have no support.
Yeah.
They have, and when you went to school, you had somebody who said, let me study with you. You had parents who said, did you do your homework?
This does seem to be part of it. So somebody raises their hand and says, I want to be part of it. It seems that those who don't raise their hand are going to be this influence that are going to be around them, that are going to continue to say, you're going to fail, it's not going to happen. Who then, Ray, is that positive influence? And is it somebody from the outside who's going to say, nope, you can make it?
We are. What we're going to do as a part of this model, we haven't finished it yet, but we're working on it. Jan and I met about it the other day. We're going to bring them together on a little bit of a campus on our property. We're going to bring them together so they'll be living with other folks in apartments right next to them who are doing the same thing. They'll be going to class together. They'll be studying. They'll be going to study classes with their children. So their children will be doing the 5th grade math and 5th grade English, and mom will be studying for her GED or be taking classes at Quinsig, and she'll be studying, and then they'll be going to dinners there. So we're going to create this little support network. The support network will include themselves, of course, and outsiders. We're going to try to bring the faith community into this because we think faith is an important part of building up that support and confidence. And we're going to look to bring outsiders in to give them the confidence and the guidance that they need.
Well, I got to tell you, you know what I love about this, Janice? I mean, right here in Worcester, you're going to do something.
Absolutely.
I mean, not just talk about something, but really make something happen. Now, you said that there were some models outside of Worcester, but it seems to me that Worcester may very well end up being a model for the nation.
We hope so.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is fantastic. What do you see, and how long do you think that this goes before we begin to see it bear some fruit?
Well, you know, every new effort is a little bit different, but we would anticipate over the next couple of years, 3 to 5 at the distance, we would see tremendous change in how housing is done in Worcester.
Gaze into the crystal ball, Ray, okay? So bring us now that 3 to 5 years out. What do you see?
Well, I see this program working effectively for people who raise their hand, but I also see some fundamental changes in public housing as a result of this. We're looking at a range of things. We're looking at whether or not we can take down some of our less effective public housing because it's too large and too dense and give family vouchers and have them move into private housing. We're looking at things like whether or not people should have time limits for the amount of time they live in public housing, because I think in the long term, that's where the country's going. I think there's going to be an extended period of time where you can have a benefit and then it's going to stop. So that it's not going to be second generation and third generation. You're going to get to go for so long and then you need to have moved yourself up. We're looking at a number of programs to deal with grandparents who have children. And so because of Jan's really gotten our engine going. And we're looking at several different things that aren't necessarily a part of this grant, but we'll learn from this and use the lessons here, and I guess that's the point of these kinds of grants, to make broader systemic change within the agency and across the city and across the state.
We have just a minute left, but I'll go back to, Ray, when you were talking about looking at public housing that didn't look like public housing. The fact that we read all the time about how you really crack down on who is living in these properties and any crime in there. It seems to me that you couldn't be at this point if you hadn't have already done that work.
I think so. I think that's correct. We've done all the things that we needed to do. And I told my staff the other day, I didn't go there to become executive director to fix the windows. We're fixing the windows and the kitchens and everything else, but that's not why I went there. I went there to change some people's lives and to do something positive. But we had to do all kinds of stuff. We had to get the gangs out. We had to reduce the crime rate. We've done all those things. We had to make it clean and neat and livable. And we've done all those things to the buildings, but we haven't done those things to the residents. And that's what the Health Foundation grant will allow us to do. To now, don't worry about the windows. We've got people fixing them. Don't worry about the doors. Now go fix the residents. Give them the opportunity that your children would have, my children would have, and anyone else's children would have, because we have the kind of support that we have in our lives. We want to give it to them.
That has to be our last word. Jan Yost, thank you so much.
Thank
and congratulations
you.
on supporting such a wonderful program and aiding. And Ray, congratulations to you too. We'll have you back on before the 3 years along the way to see how this is going right here on the Hank Stolz Experience.